Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Preston, and to all of you for being up at it bright and early this morning. I can't start this without acknowledging my admiration for my former leader, under whom I was first elected in 1997, Preston Manning. And I just realized that Derek inherited the job I once had as head of the Taxpayers Association in Alberta, and I'm seeking to inherit the job that Preston's father once had. So it's a pretty tight circle here. And it's worth mentioning, for those of you too young to recall, and well, I only know this from the history books, but Preston's father, Ernst Manning, was, I think a strong case can be made, the most effective and politically successful premier in Canadian history. Governed for 30 years, seven elections, never less than 50% of the vote, not a single major scandal in 3 decades, took over a bankrupt province, built it into modern Alberta, helped to create the regulatory framework for our energy wealth when the oil boom started in the late 1940s, and did it with an incredible parsimony. I think your father, Preston, if I'm not mistaken, had on average 1 or 2 political staff in his office. So it is an amazing legacy which we should... Why do I mention this? Because somehow the left in Canada has managed to turn Tommy Douglas into a secular saint, and I think we should remember our conservative heroes too in this country. I also want to acknowledge Derek, who in many ways represents the future, and I've known Derek since he was a student here at Carleton, working on the Hill, and an incredibly strong, principled advocate for conservative values. Thank you for all you're doing, Derek, for being well ahead of the parade on the Project for Unity in Alberta. Great as well to see Angela, Don, and Prasad here, all fantastic MLAs fighting the NDP in the Alberta legislature. Friends, it's quite fitting that we should be at this national conference discussing the future of Alberta conservatism, because in so many ways, Alberta is and has been the beating heart of Canadian conservatism, the crucible of free market, free enterprise, and conservative ideas. It has been really the engine of Canada's prosperity in the past 2 decades. And that's why what matters in Alberta matters to all of us in every corner of the country. That, in fact, is why I gave up my seat in Ottawa after nearly 20 years and gave up my only income to roll around the province, putting 60,000 clicks on my blue Dodge Ram pickup, going to it seems like virtually every hamlet, village, town, and constituency, from high level near the Northwest Territories to Milk River on the U.S. border, and everywhere in between, in over 650 events, meeting over 25,000 people. And I can tell you, why did I do that? I'll tell you why. Because I am deeply concerned that if this accidental socialist government manages if we sleepwalk our way into a vote split that allows them to win a second term, if they are in office for 8 or 9 years, they will not just change the structure of Alberta's economy, they will change Alberta's political culture in ways that are irreversible. And they will still that beating heart of conservative ideas, of enterprise, and of free market, the free market spirit in Canada. And it would affect forever the prospects of conservative ideas in our country's politics. So this is a fight for Alberta, but in some respects, it's also the fight for Canada. I don't think we can or will see sustainable renewal of the national conservative movement without taking back Alberta and putting it on track with common sense government. So that's what drew me into this fight. And I'm so pleased to report to you the good news that, as Preston's polling demonstrates, there is huge, what that shows is the breadth of support for the concept of unity in Alberta right now, but it doesn't show you the depth, which is phenomenal. In every corner of the province, in every social-economic category of the province, I have encountered Albertans who cannot even conceive of why the political class, of why political insiders and elites would risk the future of the province, of their families, their businesses, their economy, because of labels and resentments and egos that have built up over a decade of division. They're just telling us to fix the problem, in Alberta parlance, to just get her done. And that's why, quite frankly, when I started this project, I fully expected and priced in significant resistance from some of the old members of the PC establishment to whom Derek referred. And I'm continuing to see that. In fact, a fellow just filed his, I think, 4th application to disqualify my candidacy the other day. It's like Groundhog Day, the movie. It keeps going on over and over again. And I regret, but fully expect, that on the floor of the PC Leadership Convention 3 weeks from today, there will, should I be honored with the mandate to pursue unity from the members, I fully expect there will be a handful of people gathering in front of the TV cameras to announce that they can't possibly support a unified conservative movement. But what this process has taught me over 8 months is that they are a tiny and angry minority, that the vast majority of Albertans are still hopeful about the future of their province, and they want to bury the hatchet. They want, and really what my campaign has been about in the past 8 months is a voice and a vehicle for those grassroots Albertans who felt ignored by political leadership. Which is why we've succeeded in, getting about 80% of the PC electorate on side, 80% of the membership, as reflected in votes cast at 87 delegate selection meetings, about 80% of the elected delegates to support unity. So I have this 5-point plan. That's right. Well, yeah, it's worth a hand. So I have this 5-point plan, first of all, for the PCs to elect a pro-unity leader. I wish that there had been other pro-unity candidates, but there weren't, excuse me. And can you believe it? If I hadn't stepped into this, you would have had 3/4 of the PC membership and electorate wanting unity, but 100% of the candidates opposed to it. That is a perfect reflection of what became of the culture of the party. This kind of top-down political arrogance, telling people what to think rather than bother to ask them or listen to them in the first place. So thank goodness, so there was nobody else, unfortunately, willing to be a voice for the cause of unity. But if I get that mandate on March 18th, I then hope to sit down with my friend and former colleague, Brian Jean, to begin the discussion on an agreement in principle to create a united party. There's many different ways of doing that, but these two parties are voting together in the legislature now 90% of the time. They're voting for each other's amendments 100% of the time. And while there are differences in the histories and cultures of the two parties, there's actually no significant, major substantive policy issue today on which they disagree. And so there is no reason why those negotiations should be complicated. If we get to that agreement in principle, we would then move to the most important part of the plan. I call it the grassroots guarantee, where we ensure that the grassroots members of both parties make the final decision. I propose, at least on the PC side, to do so through a referendum that empowers every member with an equal voice to determine the future of the Conservative movement in Alberta, and to give it the democratic legitimacy it needs to take the following steps. And then, if it's ratified, we move to step 4 and spend the latter part of this year actually establishing a new party, a united party, and then finally that new party would elect its leader, I propose, about a year from now. And I'm not proposing that I am the right person for that job. I'm not the best or the only or the right person for that job. I truly believe if we put this vehicle together that we will attract some of the most talented Albertans offering themselves for service and leadership. And if someone else is chosen by the members, that person will have my complete enthusiastic support, because this thing will only work if people like myself are prepared to park our egos, park the brands and the labels and the resentments of a decade of division. And if we do that, we'll have about 15 months to prepare for the legislated May 2019 election. And I would hope to go out and recruit the A-team of Albertans, a new generation of talented, diverse, young, enthusiastic, principled Albertans, mixed with those who have experience and have been there, to present a potential future government. And then I believe, like Derek does, that with that renewed Conservative united party, there will be a synergy. Remember the first graph that Preston showed you. 400,000 votes apiece, roughly, for the PC and Wildrose parties in May of 2015. And then 5 months later, in the federal party's toughest election in a decade, When Stephen wasn't at the height of his popularity, we won 60% of the popular vote in Alberta, 29 of 34 seats, and 1.2 million votes, 3 times more than either the PCs or Wildrose. That means there's 400,000 free enterprise Alberta voters who came out in October in a tough campaign for the merged, unhyphenated Conservative Party of Canada, who didn't bother to show up to support either Free Enterprise Party in the spring of the same year. We need all of them, and I believe if we put this together, we will see that kind of synergy where the total is greater than the sum of its parts. So then the heavy lifting will begin. It won't be easy, but I always say, Albertans, Alberta is the land of fresh starts and new beginnings. We're never afraid of a little bit of hard work. It's the spirit of Alberta is the spirit of get her done. When you see an obstacle in the oil field or running a farm or a ranch or a business or in your family, you just dig deep, you innovate, you work hard, and you overcome the obstacles. There's no obstacle in the unity process that we cannot overcome. There's no obstacle in the NDP's legacy that we will not be able to undo. I would have the longest ever sitting summer session of the Alberta legislature in 2019. I call it the Summer of Repeal. We'll turn off the air conditioners in the legislature to focus people's attention and to reduce our carbon footprint. You're welcome, Mark Cameron. And we will be the Bill 1, the Carbon Tax Repeal Act. The Carbon Tax Repeal Act, and will follow by a succession of repeal of the NDP regulatory and legislative agenda. We do all of that, and we will renew the Alberta Advantage. We'll get Alberta back on track as the beating heart of enterprise in Canada, as a place of hope and opportunity for generations to come. Thank you.